Welcome, Dr. Ashish Joshi, sir. Thank you so much for accepting and coming. For everyone, the topic for the last session for the day is role of public health informatics in solving public health challenges of 21st century. This will be by Dr. Ashish Joshi, sir. Dr. Ashish Joshi is currently Senior Associate Dean, Academic and Students Affairs at Kani Graduate School of Public Health and Health Policy, New York. He has completed a PhD in health informatics after his master's in public health from Boston University. He continued to pursue his career as an applied researcher, mentor, administrator, innovator, and an entrepreneur, and designs and develop, implement, and evaluate sustainable, multi-sector, accessible, affordable, reimbursable, and tailored technology. The smart, which we can say interventions to address the population health challenges of 21st century. He has designed and implemented more than 20 health technology systems in various languages in urban slum, rural and tribal settings. His recent collaboration with the Digital India Government of India has been to explore innovatively on how technology can be used to address SDGs. He has also done several research projects in US, India, Nigeria, Haiti, Egypt, and Brazil, funded by federal agencies including NIH, AHRQ, US Department of Veteran Affairs, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Ministry of Health Brazil, in ICMR, Government of India, New York, and even the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene and New York State AIDS Society and various other foundations. Dr. Ashish Joshi has published more than 100 papers in international peer-reviewed journals and presented at several national and international conferences. He has also written his book on population health informatics, driving evidence-based solutions into practice. We are really happy to have you here with us, sir. Thank you so much. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Garima. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can.
Yeah, and I need to share my slides.
So you can screen share. So on the middle of the screen there will be an icon next to your video and audio.
Got it.
Yes, sir. And thank you so much, sir, for joining so early. It is evening for the audience. It is evening in the India, but it's 7 o'clock in the morning in US. So thank
Uh,
you so much.
no, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter at all. So give me 1 second, please. Okay.
No issues.
Can you see my screen now?
Yes, sir, we can.
You can see the PowerPoint, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. So first of all, thank you so much, Garima, and I think IMA Mumbai. I want to thank you all, and it's such a pleasure to be here. And I was really thinking of I just finished off my talk last night at 2 in the morning with Lady Irving College. And so it was when I was listening to you and looking at what Kalpana is doing, it's a great initiative. I assume most of you are coming from medical students with a background in that. And so I try to make my presentation in two formats. One is going to be talking about briefly what is population health informatics, what its exposure and outline, and what does it mean. And secondly, the focus should be on how you can do it, what are some of the things which are needed, because I think I very much uh, liked when I was told that we are really interested to know about how to. And I completely agree that it is a how to which is missing. So what I did at the last minute, I changed my topic of the presentation because I thought that this is very important. I just don't want to come here and tell, okay, this is what I have done, but maybe some ways on how you can also go there. So the topic is population health informatics and how you can bring your ideas into implementation. That is where I will be starting. Very quickly, presently I am the Senior Associate Dean for Academic and Student Affairs with City University of New York, School of Public Health and Health Policy, and also I founded the organization Foundation of Healthcare Technologies. Uh, I think a lot of you should know, first of all, that the City University of New York is a public university in New York. It has 500,000 students around all the boroughs, which are like five zones of New York City, and it is one of the largest urban university, probably to our knowledge, one of the best, largest urban universities of the world. It's huge, humongous. The population is, let's say, of New York's 7 million, so 500,000 students there, and each one of them having two family members. So one out of 7 person walking on the streets of New York City is attached to this university. And why this is so important for you to know, because the student body which is coming here is coming from under resource settings, very tough environments sometimes, but very, very aspirational and passionate. So I think that drives the motivation for uh, administrators, researchers like me also within the school to really uh, do something out of the box to support them. So I think in that note, I like to share a little bit of my passion and my journey with you all by bringing population health informatics into the context and also the implementation side. Uh, Garima, I hope I can be a little bit interactive here because I think this is an important aspect, and I want to. You can stop me if I. So if you say like many of like you, I have been a clinician myself. Like went into the medical schooling in India, and it's been like I did my medical schooling when I first went into 1994 to a medical college, and in 1997 is when I lost my father when I was in a medical school final year. And we are taught about clinical training, we are taught about evidence, we are taught about like how to do patient care. And yes, that's great, and we are very, you can say, motivated to do that. But for me personally, I was really started to think about like, okay, I'm doing this impact more at an individual level, and how do I really move into a population level? And for that, in 2002 is what I decided to pursue my career in public health, and I came to the US. And the reason I start with this, because many of you students who are there might be sometimes thinking, because there are a lot of options now even for the medical students, than compared to what when I was there. And choosing public health as a career, not because you wanted not to go into clinical practice, but you wanted to make sure that you're making an impact at a more preventive level and at a population based level. So pursued my education in Boston, and then the goal was, how do you bring this evidence into practice? And the reason I'm making this presentation in that way, so that people can say, okay, fine, if I'm a student, from the lens of a student, I'm looking at, okay, at a point, what options I have, what more I can do, how can I do that, and is it even worth it for me to explore this risk or not? So the third is, then I in 2009, President Obama passed a high tech act, and that is when actually the informatics really boomed up in the United States. Which means, what he suggested was that we, all the hospitals, physician offices, need to be having an electronic medical record, but then we need to make sure that technology can be used to better deliver the healthcare, reduce the cost, and also improve the health outcomes. But more importantly, the money which was sanctioned was not just to replace any kind of a human element or a human interaction, but the funding was allocated to implement and use technology as an enabler. So remember, this is very important, because a lot of time people will have the notion, am I going to create a software, or you are creating a database? Like, it's not like that. It is using technology as an enabler or as a catalyst to generate and populate the right data, use that data to define evidence-based guidelines algorithms, and then execute and implement it to improve decision making, both at the level of the provider, at the level of the patient, as well as at the level of policymakers. So this is where I pursued my PhD in informatics. And I had a couple of minutes to listen to the previous speaker, who was absolutely correct in saying that these are three independent dots. People in clinical people may not understand sometimes the public health people may not understand the clinical side people do not understand the informatics side. So having these three core areas helped me personally by having a formal training in clinical informatics and public health to connect these three dots with the aim to create a smart framework, which is solutions need to be sustainable. They need to be multi-sectoral. They need to be accessible. So sustainable means what? Like, if you think that you are going to have an idea, you want to really build it out, whether to serve clinical care or public health setting, it needs to sustain. So what is the sustainability model behind it? Multi-sector means how do you really improve health through integrating non-health sectors? So for example, uh, I don't know how to, like, because my screen is complete. So I would have asked how many of you are doing 7-day physical activity, for example. And then the question becomes is like, okay, to enhance your physical activity, if we say that we are going to basically reduce the fees for the next semester, and provided you document that you are being physically active, you will do that. So that's called persuasive medicine. How do we incentivize people to be healthy and not penalize the only the sick? So there has to be some kind of a multi-sectoral engagement, which means education, employment, other sectors need to work. How do you expect a person to be healthy if problem is that he doesn't or she doesn't have a job? Accessible means we need to have yes, one way we can say during this pandemic people need to get COVID-19 tested, but then the question is, if there is no lab facility easily available or accessible, how do you get that done? Affordable, I am giving you a technological solution which is great, but it's so expensive that it can't reach the common person. So where is the affordability? Reimbursable means somebody will have to pay, and tailored is that solutions need to be personalized, contextualized, and culturally relevant and applicable. So the goal was to have a meaningful impact in the world. And this, I use the word meaningful because you can be a great public health professional, you can be an excellent clinical person, you can be, at the end of the day, somewhere you have to realize what is meaningful to you, why you are doing this, what is the purpose of it, and how does it help overall in the larger community aspect of it. In my career roles, like as many of you, I was a medical student, simply coming out of the medical school, going into my residency program. I was like practicing in Delhi with the government hospital, and then moved into my career into international student. And never ever, I would say, because I would be wrong in saying that if I thought that I would be today an academic dean or an administrator of a school of public health in the US. But yes, I knew that something different I want to do, but not necessarily that my career will shape into this way. So if you reflect upon some of the things of your previous years, you will always say that, okay, I wish I could have done this, or maybe I could have acquired these skills. So these different career roles is what my journey has been, and I'll try to give you an examples of each one of them, a little bit of that, and what it took you really to take it there. So started a journey from researcher, mentor. I love to mentor students, whether they are undergraduate, high school, anybody. Innovation and entrepreneurship is a key thing, but you have to remember very carefully that innovation and evidence-based innovation is two different aspects. Entrepreneurship is great, but entrepreneurship without having a skill to be an entrepreneur and not having a model to sustain could be a problem. So that doesn't mean that innovation was wrong, that doesn't mean entrepreneurship is wrong. That just means that are we equipped with the right skills to execute and implement these our goals and our tasks, what we want to do to accomplish that. uh, I don't put this slide for many other talks, but for this slide, for this PowerPoint, I did put it together. I arrived in the US to pursue my MPH in 2002, and today a lot of students, especially when they come from India, they sometimes if they find me out, they will reach out to me. So I'm coming because I have an international visa. I'm coming to pursue my career in public health. So my first question to them is, why you're coming, and what are you going to do? How have you planned it out? So arriving in the US in 2002, I can tell you that it was not at all easy. Obviously, it's a journey where you come with limited number of amount. Like I came with $3,300 approximately, one semester loan, and basically coming to the US and then thinking that maybe something will happen, and just came with the flow, not really planned out of how I'm going to survive or thrive. 2004 completed my MPH in Boston University. 2004 to 7, after completing my master's in public health, I pursued my role as a research coordinator with the University of Maryland School of Medicine. Then very is, I can say, maybe you have to see this because many people with public health and clinical background will not leave their full-time job to leave it, go into a full-time faculty position with School of Engineering and Information Systems. But in 2007 I decided to take that risk, and I thought to myself, I have a public health training, I'm a clinician, but why not I just move into a School of Engineering to see the other side of it? Because when I came, I hardly knew computers, I hardly knew like internet. I was like, you can imagine, I'm talking to you about 2002. You only goal was you were going into the practice and just seeing the patients. And at that moment, when you came in 2004, you found one incident which happened in an on-campus job. The person sitting next to me, man, I could see his hands on the computer, and he was like a computer geek. But there was one missing link in him. He did not had a clinical background, and we were working in a endocrinology lab. So I found that yes, I can probably acquire the skill of learning the technology a little bit much better, but I don't know if he has a keen interest to do clinical training right now. So at that moment, it was a striking thing that, okay, you know what, I need to pursue my career somewhat in informatics, not knowing what informatics is at that point. But that was the kind of a transformational thing for me personally, to integrate my clinical public health training with informatics. And that is the journey I decided to pursue, which was not a traditional path. Became a faculty with College of Public Health at University of Nebraska. And at that point, I will come back to that briefly, that 2010, I made my first trip back to India, more in a formal way. And at that point, did one of the research projects in the state of Odisha before setting up the foundation in 2012, which I will talk to you about that. And then since 2014, it's been quite a journey. Started as an assistant dean for student affairs, then associate dean, and then the senior associate dean. It's interesting when you see this kind of a ladder. It might look like it's many times people come and talk, and then they don't describe what it took them to reach to that point. So I will say that a lot of lessons have been learned, and I think it's very important for you people to understand that, one, that things don't happen overnight. You have to be very patient, persistent, and make sure that what you believe in is also slowly to enhance your skills to get it delivered. So just your belief alone will not do it. That is more like a catalyst to you. My expertise is in the area of population health informatics. Many people will be hearing the word informatics. Somebody will be describing them in some more on the clinical informatics, health informatics, medical informatics, bioinformatics. There are several definitions to that. So my hope is that by the end of this presentation, we can also orient you to what the field is about and what are some of the critical domains of this field. So uh, what specifically under population health informatics, what I'm doing. So if we say what is population health informatics, how are you designing, developing, implementing, evaluating technology enabled interventions, programs, policies to guide informed decision making? Just if we have to explain you in a simple, not too much technical jargon. What are the core research expertise areas? Population based surveillance, which means many times you will see that a lot of policy formulation is done, and policy formulation can be done from top down approach. And population based surveillance, I use a word rather than hospital based surveillance. Population based surveillance means how do you use large data in the community settings and use that data to guide the needs of the people across multiple sectors. The second is consumer health informatics. Consumer health informatics talks about, for example, or you must be all searching information over the internet. Sometimes today, like Google creates an identity of the people who are searching. How do you know what information you are over the internet looking is accurate, credible, or is it reliable, or is it authenticated? So consumer health informatics allows us to identify right sources of information, ensuring that the information what we are looking for is credible, and then also what are how we can tailor. So if I have to tell and ask you, or like, okay, let's create a diabetes education program, and let's say you create a PowerPoint presentation of that, but remember that the people, if I not then we say, okay, go to a hospital setting and educate people on the diabetes. You can do a general education, but each person has its own risk. So how do you tailor make that message? And that tailoring is very critical, and that field is some aspects of that field is called as consumer health informatics. Human centered technological interventions means, like, Gariman is looking for a solution A. Maybe Sananda, I read some of the names, might be looking for solution B. So I can't just give the solution B to Garima and solution A to Sananda when the needs are different. So human center means, how do you know what the user needs? How do you really see what kind of tasks they're looking to perform? So even if you want to create an apps tomorrow, or you want to use technology, you need to understand what the user needs are, so that you can tailor make that technology to that population. Another layer is population health dashboards. Very, very important that dashboards can be, you are looking at data coming all over the place. You just type in, like, look at COVID-19. So much data is out over there. Now, each country is creating their own data. So at the end of the day, we need to understand, okay, what does this data mean to us? So, for example, if I just need to make a comparison that, okay, between four states of India, Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, Punjab, or anything else, I'm not naming, but any specific. And all these states, some are showing high increase in COVID-19 cases, some are showing low cases. The question becomes is why? It's not about, like, yes, they are becoming high, but the question is why, and what is causing it? How do we really prevent it? Where is the gap? How do we really come up with policies which work to that context? So dashboards allow you to aggregate data from multiple sources to make informed decision making. I truly believe that, yes, the field of if you allow me, that artificial intelligence is great, it will happen, but for that, first of all, you need the right data. You need to make sure that the data is meaningful, so that when you apply the computational models or technologies, you're getting the outputs which are able to help and guide you making decisions. I've been working in several areas of global health. A lot of people sometimes say, okay, you're giving a talk in the US, the context in India is different. So for the last 10 years, I've been coming to India nearly every month, worked in different settings. Innovation, entrepreneurship, sustainability. I always emphasize on sustainability a lot. So yes, you can start. If I start an organization 2012, yes, I might believe in my own self that it is innovative, it is entrepreneurial, but is it sustainable? How do you make it sustainable? So sustainability is a key word which should be taught, and whether you have the time at your side, you should learn about sustainability. Public private partnerships is very, very critical, especially because you can't, like, look at the just simply the COVID-19 as an example. People are going to the private hospitals, then they're going to public hospitals. If there's no understanding about the public and the private, how do you even know what is a true burden of COVID-19 in the country? And as you move into a data rich environment, it will play a very important role. Is, like, many of you might be aware that National Digital Health Mission has come, National Digital Health policies out there. Now the question is that policies looks great, but the goal is, how is it going to get operationalized? What are the skills which are needed? What are the tools which need to be there? And I think the understanding about data policy and governance, so it's not about just implement technology. It's also about understanding what are some of the privacy rules, what are some of the privacy frameworks, what standards are being used. So are the systems talking to each other? What is the sharing of the data across the different entities? So all these play a important role when we are talking about uh, population health informatics or health informatics space solutions and interventions. Do not forget that at the end of the day, whatever solutions you're coming up with, they need to be for the community. Sometimes we go out and do a lot of surveys, we collect the data, and people are kind enough, they will support, participate, but how many times those solution findings are taken back into the community to make a change? It's not very common, and somebody will collect the data, publish the findings, great job done, they get all the accolades, but at the end of the day, people who have contributed to that, they are looking for the people who collected data, like, can you please come and help us and tell us what the problem is, how should we solve, what are the solutions? So whatever research you do, you have to ensure that ultimately that gets translated into practice. uh, I've been mentoring. I like to highlight because I think there's a difference between teaching and mentorship to me. Teaching can be great, we educate the students. I got education, but at the end of the day, it is a mentorship which plays a very important role, because that can show you the right path. And it is very important that mentorship, I have personally felt, that is a very critical component. So I try to do what I best I can, because that is something which is in my hands. So remember one thing, that if you say that, okay, you have an idea, you want to implement, look at what your strengths are, look what your weaknesses are, start with something what you can do if you don't have a team, and then see how far you can go with that, demonstrate its success, and then you bring in the team. So there are many ways on how you have to do. So I'm trying to exemplify all these slides in such a way that it is applicable and contextually relevant to you as a student itself. I'm not going to come and talk too much about what public health is, but defining public health is very important. That, remember, there are many definitions, but I picked this definition. It is a science of protecting and improving the health of people and the communities. So, unfortunately, I'm in the US. There are people who say, the leadership, the president of the United States might also say, for example, like, we should drink this to prevent COVID-19. So I think the whole purpose is that we need to talk about science. And when we talk about science, that means that there's an interaction between the data, the evidence, the policy, and the overall goal of what public health is. How do you improve the health of people and their communities? Are we going okay, Kima? Is everybody okay with this?
So
Yes,
we're
sir.
fine.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this is what we are dealing with. All of you are today, like, maybe a computer gig, tech gig, social media, you are going all over the place. You see the amount of data you're contributing to it. Now, similarly, this is happening with the health data. You will go to YouTube, you will find a lot of educational videos on healthcare. You will find a lot of topics. You go to Google, you go to Facebook, Twitter, like, I don't even know, but this is a large. So you are probably in an era of a data rich environment. Now the question becomes is, what do we do with this data? So some of the challenges of the data are, like, because of the increased wearable sensors, people are using Fitbits, their phones have apps which can collect the data based on your mobility. Increased digital data is there, increased mobile phones are there. So the challenge one, volume of data, very large volume of data is gathered. Variety of data. As earlier speakers said, that they are using images, for example, like, imaging data is there, text data is there, audio data is there. Velocity, the speed with which data is getting generated, is very much high. Uncertainty of data is very, veracity of data, we call this as 4 V's. Uncertainty of data is very important, because these are the critical 4 V's elements of big data. Whenever somebody says what is big data, it is about volume, it is about variety, it is about velocity, and it is about veracity. Veracity means how confident and how certain you are in the data what you have. On the other hand, you have too much information, too much relevant information too quick, and very difficult to distinguish which information is reliable and helpful. So if I'm coming to India, and let's say simply if I have to find a place to stay, there are so many options I have, right? And there are so many sites which are out there. I don't know where to go. Think about this way, that if you have to make a decision to go to a particular hospital, how do you make that decision? Is it based on the name? Is it based on the type of care which somebody is giving? Is there any documentation on which hospital is doing better than other? Is there any kind of available outcomes dashboard which says, oh, there is a quality criteria? What measures are there? So overall, it is very difficult to distinguish which information is reliable and helpful. So what are we trying to do? Where is the value of this data? How do we make this data meaningful, that can give us the right guidance and knowledge and generate the knowledge to help us inform decision making? So this is the current problem or challenge you're dealing with, and you're going to see this a lot more. On the other hand, so there are data related challenges, and then there are certain technology related challenges. Access to technology is a critical component. Some people may have access, some people may not have access. So the problem, because if you have a technological solution, then basically we are creating digital divide, because those who will have the access will get the benefit, and those who will not get the access will not get the benefit. So that is called disparity. So technology should not be alone the word which you should come up as a solution. You say, oh, you know what, is it accessible, is it affordable, is it available, or no? Skills. We did a study with urban slums of New Delhi, and I'll share very quickly about that. In the technology skills, what the challenge was? People were using phones to make phone call, but not necessarily as an SMS. So if tomorrow you are giving them health education messages through SMS, they may not be able to read or write. So that means in that community in itself, some people are getting the benefit, some are not. Financial barriers, like people can afford maybe basic phones, Android phones, iPhone. Not every solution is like our study also showed that 60% of our sample had a basic phone and not an Android phone. So if you have apps which are delivering healthcare, that means those who have the technology, they will be able to buy it and access it. Those who do not. So you have to be very careful, that is technology creating a digital divide, or is technology bridging a digital divide? And technology, when you use the word, does not mean alone like you can have an app only. There could be a telephone linked care system, there could be an internet, there could be a standalone systems which do not need internet. So for example, use of calculator doesn't need an internet, but it is doing the calculations. So how do you create a health calculator? Just imagine that, which does not work, which does not need an internet to work. So a common person at least can self-care and self-manage based on the evidence-based guidelines. Not like, okay, anybody can just start to take care of themselves, whatever they want. Other things which are very, very, very important is privacy and quality. I can tell you this is going to become a major thing. If some of you are interested, you should read about like, okay, what are some of the privacy frameworks which are there. Just understand this area will become very critical. And like how the data is stored, where the data is stored, who owns the data, how do people share the data, what are the different models which are done in the different parts of the world, and how and what kind of knowledge you can derive from them and contextualize in your own environment. Lack of awareness, people may not even know that what can technology do. So yes, this is not a complete list, but this is a list which I gathered based on my work of with about 8 countries where I've been doing, of what possible challenges did they see. So very briefly, what is population health informatics? That is where the term came. Like, okay, we need to design a solution, and there's a different. We just not develop. Development is okay, but designing is critical element of what the user needs are. We want to implement, and then we also need to have an evaluation of this platform or intervention. Because if we don't have an evaluation component, how do you even say that this thing works or not works? So we need data-driven, evidence-based interventions which are enabled through use of technology to guide your new interventions, innovations, and programs and policies for improving health outcomes. What are some of the principles of population health informatics? You want to promote the health of population, and you want to prevent the disease and injury, and you want to prevent at all vulnerable points, which means if a person is staying at home, somebody who's going at work, somebody who is at school, somebody who is living in an old age home, so you name it. So prevention has to be done at multiple levels. It cannot be just that this program works only for people who come to the hospital, or this program works only for the people who are staying at home. So we need to look at public health from a perspective of multiple level of care at all levels, just to ensure that prevention. So take an example of COVID-19. I can be staying at home and wearing a mask, but now tomorrow if I go to my workplace, the workplace doesn't allow me to say, okay, I don't care whether you wear a mask or not. That's wrong. So even though I am taking my measures at my home, I'm not able to take those measures at my workplace. So which means prevention should be done at all vulnerable points. So what is the need? Need is that we are looking for solutions which work for a common person. How these solutions are based on real data. Where is the evidence to document and demonstrate that this data is generating new knowledge and shows that the solutions are working? We need a major transformative shifts, which I see myself also like reading a lot about the health policy, education policy. These are good shifts which are happening. Integrated approaches is very critical. You don't want to innovate. Let's say you have 200 students who are attending this, and all of the 250 are creating their own solutions, but they are not even knowing what others are creating. So what is happening? We are doing duplication. There's redundancy. So where is that common platform where to identify that how to really permeate and communicate and collaborate? So you need cohesiveness. And what new solutions are needed to enhance population health outcomes? And remember, very, very important thing, well-being. Because it is not about just to be disease free. It is also very important to be mentally able to cope with the environment. So it's a physical, mental, social aspects of the individual's status. That is very important. So if you have learned about sustainable development goals, it doesn't say SDG goal 3, good health. It says good health and well-being. So predominantly the SMART is aimed to improve well-being of the population. Somebody might not have a disease, but he or she still might not be having a good well-being. So I emphasize, I think well-being of the students, well-being of the youth, well-being of the older adults, that's an important context and concept of bringing well-being to the, there are countries which have Ministry of Well-being actually. So that is an important area which is also getting expanded. What is SMART actually? A lot of people ask. It's been very difficult for me to what SMART is. Maybe somebody says, is it a product? Is it a platform? I think it is a kind of, to me, it's a way of life. How you look at things, you translate those ideas into a kind of a framework, defining certain elements of that, and then you operationalize them into different sectors, and then you look at its outcomes. So look at this as SMART as a building block, and a building block which has about 10 different modules. Each module has its importance, but they are all interdependent to each other. They can't work without independently to a very large extent. They are still connected to each other. So SMART to me is a kind of a way of integrating and bringing multiple sectors all together to better gauge the individual and the population needs. So for example, at this point, as you being a medical student, your first priority could be that, you need to finish your education. Second, what do you do after education? Employment, where do you go for higher education? And then you might be thinking, okay, what I want to do. So your priority at this point may not be health. Your priority at this point is education, employment, career. But if I keep on telling you that, okay, please make sure that you're physically active, please make sure, that's good, but I need to put the context. I need to link education, employment, health together. So that is to me a SMART. It has been tested in several countries. Some elements of each of the SMART framework have been tested in multiple countries. And it was interesting. I chose a country like Brazil, where language is Portuguese. In Egypt, you have a different concept of what you were testing. Nigeria was a very different African nation. India, obviously, my country of origin, and also at the same point, like bringing the wide, diverse perspectives. US has its own perspective on the North America. So you were trying to test this thing in various countries across various platforms. These are the three areas which, as I mentioned earlier, is the large focus of mine. Uh, where now the question is, okay, you have this framework. So let's think of this like you have an idea. Now your idea is like, okay, many times when I talk to the students, they say, I want to help the poor, I want to really help others. Okay, that's great, but you need to have a path to do that. What do you want to do? So for me, the way it was, okay, how do I address sustainable development goals through this framework, and what are those goals which I can help, and some of these goals which I might not be able to help directly. So one is no poverty. Okay, then how do you address the issue of zero hunger, good health and well-being, quality education, gender equality, clean water, decent work, reduce inequalities, sustainable cities and communities, and partnership for the goals? If I really ask you, these are independent goals. And I drew the arrows both ways because I think everything is connected to each other. But it looks good in the figure and the PowerPoint slide, but it's very challenging when you take it to the field. So, good health well being cannot be achieved if the person is not having a clean water and sanitation access. You can't have a decent work and economic growth if you don't have a quality education. We can't talk about sustainable cities and communities if we don't have reduced inequalities or gender equality. So this means I'm just trying to give you a framework that how these different elements are connected to each other. So I was told in one of my very limited interactions was like I didn't know about Kalpana at that point. Like so, I asked like they said like we should focus on the how to, and I was so amazed to hear that. I said, the first thing, what do you do now? So this is the element, and now how do you approach it? Let's say we go to a community, we identify a community. Who is your stakeholder in that community? It is the people. Okay, you one remember one thing when you're approaching that. Uh, I will make a disclaimer here that this presentation was made at the United Nations after they asked me only one question, like how did you approach this? So the emphasis was stakeholder engagement. One, you have to be honest. Your intent should be good. You want to have really create an impact because there are many organizations, there are many people who are doing research, but sometimes they go to the community, collect the data, and then they don't come back there. So stakeholder engagement is one. Within a community, like let's say today I'm giving a talk. Let's take this as an example. You are my stakeholder. Now, not everybody might be interested in this talk. Some of you might be. So what might be interest is, okay, who are early adopters, who would be interested to execute what you're thinking through. So they become kind of community mascots. Okay, let's say we are going to do some kind of work within the community. What is already happening there? What kind of programs are there? What kind of policies are there? So you create an inventory of them. Then remember, community based participatory research, you should never view that okay, you are going to come and say okay, please do this. No, you recruit them and make them as a participant to your research, and it is called CBPR, community based participatory research, where people within the community contribute to the research and become a partners and collaborators and stakeholders in that. Understand the community needs. Once you have understood the community needs, you need to translate this data into something meaningful, which means implement then a solution. Create an evaluation and sustainable plan. I come across many people who will say we have this platform, I have created this small app. Then my second question becomes is, who has tested the app? Where have you gone into the community? Who you have tested it with? What are your results? Never a solution is perfect. I can tell you, even today, whatever I do, if I say to you on this platform that I have a perfect solution which will work, no, that is not the case. When the health of the population changes, then how come your health product will not have to change? So it is always, I call this that you create versions of products. It is V1, V2 version 3, version 4. We can't have one product which can work in all scenarios, but we can have a framework defining that product. And then policy formulations. So why this advantage of this kind of a thing is that you have a top-down policy, but you also have a community participation, which is bottom up, and that's where the SMART comes in. So this is a framework which I am making it applicable to any sector: health, education, employment, even starting a startup or innovation, you name it. Even in my own day-to-day work style, how do you involve everybody? How do you be inclusive? How do you take them along with you? Uh, Make a participatory approach to learning. These are some of the applications which have been done across the different parts of the world. I'm not going to go into the detail, but to be honest, this is a kind of a reflection of showing that it was not only that, like, you are just, you have to show that you've worked on it. So one of the things is, like, I can have an idea, I can come back to somebody and say, can you please fund me? I have this great idea. And somebody may not even agree with you. And not many people at all agree with me. They may say, you know what, like, are you crazy? Like, what is wrong with you? And that's a reality. So at the end of the day, yes, I can come and give a talk, I can be very ideological, but I have to be very practical and pragmatic. The people will not support you in your early inceptions many times. That should not demotivate you. You have to follow your own path. So I take this with full, like, humble and humility, this thing, because I put this, that when you came to 2002, you hardly knew the use of internet or computers. I remember I have kept a receipt of $75 in Indian. At that time, it was, I think, 46, 47 rupees. And I took that copy, I have with me still. Somebody who I paid in the basement of a house to tell, like, okay, teach me how to set up a word. And then you write the first textbook on population health informatics. And people, when I was asked in the US to come and give a talk on this for 5 minutes, they said, you have 5 minutes to give. And I said, I will just make one sentence and I leave it. I said, the writing of the book made invisible the visible. So one of the things which I will encourage you all, document your ideas. That does not mean that you will be able to accomplish them today, but time will come when you can implement them. But at that time, you may forget them. So anything comes to your mind, whether it makes sense, whether it does not make sense, do not worry about it. Do not worry, just write them, and you never know where the journey will take you, where the path will go. So, how to bring ideas into reality? Very important thing. But you also have to see what are you passionate about. Yes, went to medical school. My parents also wanted it, but at the end of the day, I need to really be passionate about what I want. And if you can make your passion a profession, nothing like that. So if somebody tells me, like, okay, you have to give a talk at 1 in the morning, yeah, I will give it, because I don't view this as a job. This is my passion. Nobody's asking me to, or nobody's paying me to do this stuff. And I strongly feel that this is my passion. And if I can make this as a professional aspect of career, that I enjoy this, what I'm doing. So I think this is something what you people need to think about beyond just ideas, is what are you passionate about? I will highlight this, because everything does not happen. Normally what will happen, Garima, when you were reading my portfolio, I was very much thinking like this. Like, maybe 10 years, 15 years ago, somebody else was reading and I was sitting in an audience, but I never knew that, okay, how did this person go there? So the slide is focusing on that. When you went to a new country, first of all, Boston is very cold. Okay. And I was living in Delhi, living in the temperature of minus 25, minus 30 degree, and you don't know whether you can afford a $250 warm coat to survive. It's difficult. Finding a place to live, I'm talking about pragmatic things. Many of you might have come from outside Mumbai, or people from Mumbai may have gone somewhere else. They need to find a place to live, right? Imagine now all of a sudden you have to go in an international setting with limited resources. You know what you have, and you have to live and find a place to live. How to commute, I didn't know how to use that, all kind of, like, metros and all that stuff. Finding the right on campus job is a very critical thing, because how are you going to survive? The pressure of limiting cost of living, at the same time you have to have your coursework started. Many times students don't talk, they don't hear this thing, and it seems that, wow, I'm sitting here, everything is so rosy, everything is so green, perfect life. No, what took you to go there is also very important. And I have been extremely supportive. I have no hesitation to say that many students who have come to the US, if they come in touch with me, I try to help whatever way I can, because I think that that is the biggest thing. People may not always, who are on this side, may not always know the challenges with what you're coming. Nobody might be knowing, or somebody might be selling the house, somebody's parents might be using the provident fund, somebody's mom must be putting the jewelry. People don't know here that. So in a way, you are creating kind of a voice that it's not about just students coming here, but also understanding how to. So you have to have that kind of a resilience in you to develop your ideation and create something what you want to create. So it's not like I want to just create a non-profit, or I want to create a startup, or I want to create an innovation, or being an entrepreneur. I need to also have that sense of resilience in me, and empathy of for people, and compassion for people, which should drive my day-to-day work also. Do not forget your roots, very important. 2002 I came, 2010 I came back to India to visit, and with a very clear thing, we all have some dreams. Most of us have some ideas to do something. There's not a single person who can say, I don't have an idea. Their ideas might be different, but everybody, I believe, has an idea. Every individual has some hidden talent. Either they can reflect upon it, somebody else might reflect upon it, somebody else might not know it, somebody might realize it later. Then, how do you translate them into ideation to implementation? So, there's a paper I'm writing about ideation to implementation. It's important to know. And yes, it is good to make a passion a profession, but how do you find a way to do that? So this last aspect of the presentation will be, how did you operationalize this? In India, I came in 2010, so you can take it at any point. I had graduated from a school of public health. I had loans to pay. uh, a lot of my friends said, like, why you are going back there, let's settle out here. We just came back. So there were four things, and I had a privilege to meet uh, the DGICMR at that time, the Indian Council of Medical Research. And I told him these four things, which I put in the slide. I said there's a lack of research based innovation. We are talking about innovation, but how do I know that my idea or my innovation is maybe not what somebody has also already developed? How do I even know that? So lack of research based innovation. I use the word limited mentorship. Why? Because teaching, mentorship is not something which people can get paid for. Mentorship is something which comes from within. You need to really be open to mentorship, and you need to really like you need to go out of the way to do that. Lack of intervention research, which is very important, is solution based research. Most of the research I'm talking to you in 2010 was focusing on, oh, this is a problem, that's a problem, our diabetes burden is increasing, we have so much of air quality bad. But why? Then what is the solution to that? And then, do we have the right skills to execute it? I Sometimes we talk about, unemployment is high or what. No, I think we need employable skills, which means we need to have the right skills to match that employment. So it's not that we are unemployed, or I feel it is more skilled unemployment. Like, how do you really give the right skill for the right job? So these were the four fundamental pillars. So as students, yes, at that point you might be at a different age, different thought process, you have the passion, but try to focus your passion into something. So use it in such a way that, okay, all these seminars you might be listening, many speakers are coming, see what you can learn from them, and then try to put it in your ideation and see and create a kind of a path. Yes, you can go from one place to another place, another place to another place, but at some point you will need some kind of a vision. And then you can have multiple goals to reach to that vision, but you need to have some endpoint you can, and those endpoints can change with your experience with your career. But this is what was to me, that okay, if I want to do something in India, these are the four things which I would like to address. And now the goal becomes, how do I address these four? Okay. And on March 6, 2012, I told you, ideas, sometimes you never know what can happen. I was flying back from Odisha to Delhi, And I literally told the hostess that, can you give me a piece of paper? She says, yeah, sure. Like, I said, no, plus I really need it urgently. So I wrote like something, and this idea of foundation somehow came. Uh, and there has to be some, and these are the words I did not change, and I'm not going to read them here, but please, you can, if you want, that the goal was not for me to just improve health. The goal was, how do you create a platform which largely helps people to achieve their dreams? And how do you operationalize that? And that's where this logo came. The logo clearly is, if you ask, is like, because I used to call my mom sometimes when I was in the US, and very difficult times I will say, oh, I'm having these problems. So it would be a day at my time and a night in India. The way it is right now, you have evening and I have morning, and I would be sharing some of my problems and she would share some of her problems, and we realized that the problems are same. So basically that is how the sun and the moon has come, and the lines in between are basically, you can look at how together we can actually solve them, no matter which part of the world you're living in. That's how the inception of this organization happened. Because very importantly, it was not just, okay, let me just start something. At the same point, I also gave a good thought about it, that okay, what is this organization going to do? Why you are creating this? The challenge was inequalities. I feel that the poor health outcomes are because of inequalities: social inequality, economic inequality, income inequality, gender inequality, ethnicity, caste. These are inequalities which are creating poor health outcomes. So how do you really address them from a broader way? You come up with the concept of rise. Like, research is critical, innovation is critical, skills is critical, and entrepreneurship is critical. So the first thing is, it took a lot of time for me to draft this. People who were working with me in India, they said, I said, I don't know. Like, I said, I'm just going to open an organization. They said, what? You're going to go in 2 weeks back to the US? I said, I don't care. Like, maybe we'll start something. But the vision was very clear. So literally, not having any projects, no employees, no place to rent, and I extended my trip 1 week, went to the realtor in Delhi and said, what is the cheapest office which I can get here? And he says, oh, it could be around 32,000 rupees. Can you bear that? I said, oh, that's a lot of money for me. I can't, because I'm just earning and paying my loans in the US. So I remember 217 square feet office we took at 27,000. And the person who gave me that office was a person whose son was also in Texas. And she said, what is motivating you to do? Like, my son has been there for 15 to 18 years. He doesn't like to come back. I said, ma'am, I don't know, but I think I would like to do something here. And then I hired 4 people who were recent graduates, and they didn't had uh, they were very worried, like they didn't know me, I didn't know. And literally I did the interviews on the by calling them, do you want to join? They said, what are we going to do, sir? I said, I don't know, like maybe sit from 9 to 5, we'll do research, something. But vision was clear. How to go there, we were worrying about later. But the vision was, okay, this organization will address those 4 things by bridging these social economic inequalities. But research is going to be the fundamental pillar of this organization, and we'll see where it goes. And we are going to be creating an impact globally, but make a platform in India, so that it becomes a kind of an opportunity for students or practitioners to come from diverse backgrounds to move forward. The mission was written, and when I was writing these things, it was very interesting. Like, some of the people were saying, like, normally when you go into an organization, you don't sometimes read all those stuff. It's sometimes just randomly written. No, in this case, it was a very well thought of. These were the only things which were written, well informed. What is our mission? Translate the research findings into practice. So if we know that this research shows that this is good for the people, then we need to bring it to practice. And it was very early technology based solutions and interventions, because a lot of people at that time were not even talking about that. And how do you improve well-being for themselves, families, and communities? So there was 3-4 buzzwords which you were using in 2010-12 to take into account. We do applied research, innovate, educate, mentor, and very, very important is engage community. I'm using more community based solutions. uh, Define the goals, what the community is looking for, generate the right data. How do you make, so urban population is different from urban slums, slum population is different from rural population is different from tribal. So you need to make sure that your solution or your ideas, what are they targeted to, who the population is, what setting it is targeted to, and have you tested it in those various settings. This was the first project in 2010, which was, to the best of my knowledge, at least documented wise, is the way we used informatics to take it technology to the people in their households to enhance their understanding about diabetes, hypertension, about metabolic syndrome. So it was very interesting. It was done in the state of Odisha with about 800 participants. The study was funded through Indian Council of Medical Research. And what was very interesting was that you engaged the students there into the research, which is very, very common in the US also. And that is, and I enjoyed going to these urban slum areas, tribal areas, rural areas myself to really understand what people do. And it was very interesting. You have to see this. And I put this because if you look at it, we had an amazing team. I don't know what you look into these pictures, but I look one thing into this thing is when these interviewers were going there, they were not sitting on the chair and the person was sitting on the floor. That was not the case. Even they will not realize that after 10 years, this is something what I'm seeing. So it's a way of how you look at the pictures. So that tells you how passionate they were to work with the populations. So they were hungry, they were anxious to get the right skills. And none of these were from public health. So things, these are important aspects sometimes we forget when we are going into ideation. So we were looking at our project, it was requiring to go there in multiple settings. Really, we took the technology to the grassroots level, and people said, okay, they can't understand computer, they are illiterate, they don't know read and write. Okay, but they can see and listen. So we created an audio and a video kind of a model where they can actually understand, and they were able to listen the messages in a local dialect. So yes, like even the dialects are different. So we recruited people from within the community who recorded the messages in the local dialect to provide the solution. That is where cultural and contextual relevance comes in. The second project was a health ATM. This model was implemented in 2010 in the tribal areas of Odisha as a pilot. Literally, I called this as a health ATM. I remember at 2 in the morning, went to the place with my team. We took about 150 square feet of space in the tribal setting, participated with the people and asked them to like implement a health ATM. They said, what is a health ATM? I said, we will have a computer, we will have blood pressure device, weight scale, and blood sugar, and we will hire one of the most educated person within the community, and a printer will be there, and we want to take the preventive healthcare to the doorstep. And the goal was to put it into a community setting. We did it. It was done first in 2010, and each person will get a health card at that time, and it will tell them, and we use a traffic light as a way to reflect that thing. So green was like, okay, they can walk, red means you can't walk, you have to, it's a danger sign, and orange becomes like you are moving towards a danger, you need to take control of yourself. So basically a research was done on how people will understand, even if they don't understand reading, can they understand the language of color. So it's called color graphics theory, where we use basically on how to communicate. These are all population health informatics domains which people learn as they go along to create solutions. So it's not just let's create an app, it's not like just let us create whatever it takes. So in that case, it was implemented in 2010, pilot tested. We used touchscreen technology so that they don't have to use keypad. So the goal was, how do you make it accessible for them? And it was done. This is the picture I remember. This is 2 in the morning in the area of Bahabalpur in Odisha. And uh, it's such a good way sometimes when you reflect back upon your journey of where it is. And we didn't had anything, the electricity was not there, and the computer would work. We would charge it about 25 kilometers away from the place, just put it everything, because the stability of the electricity was not there. So we would have two computers, so if one goes away we will have the another one. But the goal was, can this work? And this was the model at that time in 2000, I would say like maybe 10, this was the case. And then all of a sudden it got a lot of attention in the media about like how our uh, would not agree to everything what was said here, because the goal was to create preventive model, and we got very good success over there. And then we, the platform was working. We moved to 2011-12 over there in multiple places. I started the foundation 2012. The pillar became, we get several research grants, work with different medical college institutes. I wanted to just tell you that uh, research is an underpinning for everything what we create. I just don't create solutions which are not research. Somewhere there is some kind of an underlying research which is building upon innovation. This is a work to be done in urban slums. The teams would go there. You go out and yourself engage with the community. And I think that was a big factor, because when you are coming, and one of the things which was a commitment was, many times people will say, would you come back again? What if you take away your solution and don't put it again? And that breaks the trust. So you have need to be very careful that once you have decided to do something, you don't really just go there for some time and then come back. No. So we are working on about 38 urban slums of Delhi. I feel very, very good that we have built some very good collaboration and relationships with the Anganwadi centers, the community health workers, because the goal is to include them into a solution formation. Because at the end of the day, these are your consumers. This is the first slum dashboard which we created. A lot of time people say, okay, fine, now what do you do with the data? So these are the mapping of the 38 slums. I could actually pick the slum. I can see where the toilet facility is there, where the sewage facility is there, where the drinking water problems are there, where the skill centers. So that way, more policy making can be done in a guided based way. So this was a study which was the first study to look at interacting between SDG goals in urban slums. People came up with new solutions. They said it was very interesting, like skill centers were getting open, and when we interviewed the people and used the data, personally what I found was that women wanted more coaching facilities for their kids. And when I use the word coaching, doesn't mean tuition coaching, doesn't mean uh, just education. What it meant was life coaching skills, which means they're idling, they're playing in the street. Like, how do you really engage them? So that is key. When, so what this data was showing, that okay, they want to have uh, uh, more police sensitized to their needs, cleanliness drive, information about government schemes. So based on these possible community based driven solutions, we came up with our approaches on how we will go back to the community. So one, they wanted easy access to healthcare. So we took our health kiosk, which is called Swasthya Pehal initiative, to the community. They wanted skills for the kids who were in the community. So we started our Inspire initiative to talk about digital and data literacy skills, which is addressing those goals. People were actually creating products who were working from the slums. No one paid a single rupee to the organization. Each one of them who came received about a stipend to start with, so that they can, basically you were creating a life skill readiness program, but they were also becoming an agents of change for improving health and well-being of the populations where they were living. So it was not just like create an economic engine or an employment engine, but also make them aware about public health, so that when they go back into the community, they're living with their parents, they can understand that what they need to tell their parents to inform them. And that's where the RISE initiative came, and the fourth, which we are starting, is a consumer health information platform. I'm very, very determined to start. I think it's called Sangyan, which is an idea independent decisive education audio. Basically, how do you reach out to the masses through those who do not have access to, let's say, internet? But how do you really reach out? I think the goal is, like, people are looking for basic information, basic needs. How do you connect those things to the right sources is going to become a critical hub, and this is where the model of smart informatic hub is. So far, remember, I can come here and talk, but I need to talk about impact. If I don't show, if you have an idea, if you want to create some, whatever you are creating, ideation, innovation, you need to document the process. You need to record what you did, collect all those evidences, so that tomorrow if somebody questions you, you know that this is how you did it. So I can tell you, the Swasthya Pehl, I specifically put this in 2010. I remember the people's screen were about 400. 11, 12, 13, 14, slowly, some 100 people, 200 people a year were getting screen. I didn't have resources, not people were interested. Self care was like that. And 2018, 19, 20, all of a sudden there was like a huge mega way. Like, we were screening people, like almost 10,000 people have been screened. And the reason is why I put this slide. Many times I've given talk, like with IT, also with social entrepreneurship incubator at TIS. Some startups, they lose hope. They say, oh, you know what, my ideas are not good, nobody's buying into it, what am I doing? It took 8 years for this particular innovation to demonstrate its impact. I did not lose hope. Many people said this is not a good model, this is not working. And I said, how can this be not a good model when it is creating self-care? People are saying, okay, what do I eat? Where do they go to get that information? Not everybody can afford a 500 rupees, 1000 rupees consultation. So now then we started this initiative with the Delhi police, and 62% of the Delhi police stations have been covered. And now this program is moving to Uttarakhand. Inspire has been a great initiative. The goal is very clear: to mentor students, to prepare them ready for employment. And there's a difference between a job and a career. So job you do because you want to build a career. Career is something what you are passionate and we want to create a path. RISE initiative is there. So these are the impact statements. And 2018, it was very, very, I felt it was very interesting that this project of Swasthya Pehl represented India at the Digital Health Commonwealth Award, and actually won a runner-up award for the NCDs. And an 8-year journey from where you started just a small proof of concept. It took 8 years before it actually could get some recognition and visibility. Now, is this a big achievement? No. Is it giving you hope? Yes. Because people sometimes reflect upon, oh, we need to change our thought process of how we view things, because we can't say, okay, everything which is big is good. So sometimes it is very important to realize that people might have very small ideas, short ideas, and they might be doing some very good work, but how do you give them the opportunity to come to a platform where they can really carve out and build themselves up? So lastly, uh, as we said, this model was there in 2019. I gave a talk at the United Nations, and then was very fortunate that one of the UNDP chief advisors, who was had an opportunity to engage, he asked me simple thing: what is your larger vision? I said, I hope you don't laugh at what I say. He says, no. I said, maybe I would like to establish a public health research university or school of public health at some point in my life in India. And he said, what? I said, I've been coming to India for last, like, I don't know, like 98 to 100 times in last 8 years. So it seems to me that I have spent almost half of my life in India, despite being 18 years in the US. Not many of my colleagues come. They don't want to sometimes come. But I have chosen this because this is what is come. But I have chosen this because this is what is I'm passionate about. So what happened? I was taken to Uttarakhand. I love the hills, just by choice. And we collaborated with a DIT University to start the world's first PhD program in population health informatics coming out of India. And sometimes you dream that way. What you said, that okay, you wrote the first textbook. Now this domain, whenever will be cited, there will be somewhere you will be named in, and you feel proud that you are from India. The first program in the population health informatics, which is a global's first PhD program, came out of India. So yes, I have a lot of pride in my country, and I want to make sure that I can do whatever I can. And at the same time, you were trying to now scale up your model. We started at a government medical college, the first public health intervention lab. My goal was to set up public health intervention labs at medical colleges and medical institutes, because I think a new research paradigm shift is needed with the medical students. I've been working a lot with medical students across, like even from Savita Medical College, we were actually working with about 170 to 200 medical first year, second year medical college students. Working with the school students and other people who do internship with us. I don't know if somebody has ever done internship here with my organization. I'm not sure, but we have a mentorship program. We do Inspire. Now we translate it. Imagine that Swasthya Help initiative, which was 2010 just on paper. In 2019, it was also presented to the state government of Uttarakhand, and we did a successful implementation. And obviously, if COVID-19 was not there, today this program will become statewide for sure. No question about that. Community engagement and policy engagement. So your goal was like, when you take some time, remember one thing: it's not about you going alone. Okay, moving forward, you can't move alone or yourself. You have to have a good team. You have to be honest to your team. You have to be transparent to your team, and also you need to be very firm sometimes on what you're doing. Not many people will understand the vision. Not many people, they might like to cut shortcuts, you might have to be very blunt for them, that understand, like, I don't want you to see today the foundation that it has been built in one day. There's a 17-hour flight from the US to India. And imagine how many of you are taking a flight or a train. Every time you have to take it, burns you out, it tires you out. And if you're doing this for 8 years, nearly every 1 or 2 months, it's not that easy, so you have a lot of challenges with that. So during COVID, I will just rush through this. That this is one of the another platform we have created for COVID-19, Smart Rapid Tracker. I urge you. I will send the link to Garima if people are interested. This is a global policy platform. Can you see the screen? Yeah. So we have about 150 students engaged into this. This is a documented impact of where the organization has gone. Uh, Remember one thing: whatever you do, you need to document that. Write it. You never know where it will come and when it will come helpful to you. Some of the challenges, because last if you think that this has been easy, no, it is sometimes self-funded. You are managing this organization remotely, and a lot of time people, my colleagues said, oh, Ashish, there's a lot of corruption, you need to be careful. And I can vouch for that, the team which has been with me has been core to the principles of honesty. And I think you need to lead by example by yourself. I can't just come and give a talk and then practice not the right thing. So I think you need to lead it by example. And if you lead it by example, I can assure you that people, and your intent is good, people will come and join you. Sustain positive momentum. Not having a boss and not having a supervisor, sometimes people can be feeling low. Sometimes they can have uh, all kind of situations can happen. How do you sustain positive momentum among people? Continue to keep on saying that, look, the vision is this. Many people will believe, may not believe. International travel was frequent. Hiring the right team. How do you pick the right people? I don't look at the CVs. Believe me, everybody can tell you in my team that I hardly ever look at the CVs. I just talk to people and I say, you know what, I don't know. I take my risks feeling. How can I judge a CV of a person? I'm not asking them to go and code. I'm not asking them, okay, show me what you did. Time zone difference is big. You work in different time zones. Obviously, family is a very big, like, it's not only just you are making a sacrifice. Your family is, you're leaving your kid, like, you're saying, okay, I'm going to go to India because I have 3 days. So I would like to go and meet my team, come back in 3 days. Uh, there's no shortcut. I want to tell you there's no shortcut, no quick results. It takes time. And when you go back today, hopefully some of the questions you should do and write for yourself. What does success mean to you, basically? What is the success? I don't know. Maybe something somebody might say, oh, getting into a medical college is a successful thing for me. Somebody might say, I got an MD in this. Somebody might say, oh, you know what? I published a research paper. Think about this. What does success mean to you? And what you're doing, what is your main purpose of what you're doing? How do you measure impact of your success? And what does it take to lead? You can take it, leave it, break it, doesn't matter. But these are the four questions. Just try to think about them. And key takeaways is from my ways, have a purpose, be passionate, be very creative. Alone creativity will not help. You have to be passionate with creativity. Creativity does not happen everything in one go. You have to be strategic, but also be patient. Take risks, but be persistent. You have to take risk. I took a risk by coming back forth, but coming back and again, traveling to different parts of the country. Develop skills. You can't just say, I have an idea and you don't have the skills. If you don't have the skills, acquire the skills. Be positive. These are the different P's which are there: passionate, persist, patient, and these all have worked out. Be a multitasker. Many times, sometimes new students who come in to me and they say, oh, I'm doing the same thing again and again, and I laugh around in my own self and say, wow, I remember when I started this foundation, I was picking up computers from the ground floor, taking them, putting them in the office, getting a cold water cooler over there. I didn't think like that, like you're working in a different roles. So if you're going to have an idea, you want to build something, you have to do something yourself, multiple tasks, because not everybody will buy into your vision. And limit your expectations. Remember that. I tell all the team, and I always tell them, this is personally my dream, my passion. I'm not going to force you to make this your passion. I can't. So if somebody leaves you in the middle while you are really needing them the most, it's okay. Otherwise, what will happen? People start getting angry. Oh, why you're leaving at this point? I have my work to do. No, limit your expectations and develop a vision, not just the goals. Enjoy your journey and don't worry about the outcome, because you are not knowing the outcome, what will happen, but the steps you are taking to reach that outcome, you should enjoy. So, the key message: do research, be innovative, develop the right skills to do innovation and research, and become an entrepreneur. And that is a moment to rise. Okay. Thank you very much. My motto comes directly from my own life experience of saying that obstruction is opportunity and innovation is struggle. I want to thank you all for giving this opportunity. I don't know, I have gone over time or what. I'm sorry about that, but you know what? When you speak from the heart, when you speak from the passion, you can't stop it out. So I appreciate. This is my email. My webpage is there. You more than happy. The foundation website is there. You can always feel free to reach out to me, and if I can do in any way anything, I would be more than happy to do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. It was really great, inspirational and motivation session. We are really grateful. Your journey and the motivation which you explained us and was really helpful. And we had a few questions in the chat box as well. I will read them out. One is that someone is asking, what is the approximate cost it will take to come to US and start the research?
So I think, like, first of all, uh, you can. It's not about cost, how it takes. This is not a very like, this is such a broad question. You can start doing research while you are in India. Why you need to just think about the US? Okay. So you want to learn research, don't spend anything, come to the organization and just gain experience about that. The Spend your resources efficiently and in a meaningful way. So first, identify, okay, what you want to do. You want to pursue a research is one thing. Today you went to a medical college, you must have given an exam, you picked up a medical college. You are, if you're coming out of state, you might be picking a place to state that you are doing research actually, but you don't realize that you're doing research. But every day
Uh,
you buy, don't you buy clothes? You buy
yeah,
clothes, you go out, so you do research, which is the best deal you are getting, right? So you are doing
yeah.
it. But I think what you should do is, uh, I am more than happy to offer and extend my mentorship without, you don't need to spend resources. First, learn through that what you can do, and then take it from there. So don't just think that you want to come to the US or you want to come. I will tell you here very honestly. Remember this thing. I came from India to US, and listen, what is I'm doing? I'm coming back from the US to India to do the stuff. So there has to be some journey here. So if you need any assistance specifically, I'm more than happy to you answer. But what research you want to do, where you want to do, and how you want to do it, that is important.
So how, like, if we are, if students are interested, or if they want to join you with your research projects, or want to join the how, what is the procedure for how we can, like as a medical student, how we can contribute?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, one of the two things is you can independently contact. I have ninth grade student working with me from India. So I have 10th grade student from Army Public School who are I'm mentoring. So that is, as I told you, passion drives this thing. So I have my email, Garima, you have my contact. Please share with,
Yes, sir.
yeah, please share with the students as much as they want, and whatever it takes. If there is you're coming from different medical colleges, I'm more than happy to reach to the faculty within the medical colleges, because remember one thing, the faculty within the medical college is very, very important. So it is, how do you engage faculty and students to create a comprehensive research initiative is a critical thing. I think this is a great initiative what you people are putting together. I could never imagine about 10, 15 years ago people talking about research. So, but you need to keep the momentum high. And I am more than happy to work with Kalpana in whatever way I can to lend my mentorship to you all. Because India,
Thank you
India
so much.
needs physician researchers, not just physicians.
If that is something more, sir, we will be really happy. Even the organizing team, the students who all are attending, and we will try to share it with the others, the students, medical students network we have that, so that we can work together, and we will try to do something,
Yeah.
take the idea initiative ahead.
I don't want to make the speaker four waiting because I feel bad about that. I'm sorry, sir. I apologize if I've taken a little bit of your time, and please pardon me for that. I just got carried away from heart of what I'm trying to do. But I thank you all. It is such a pleasure to know you all, and please feel free to send a list of as many questions as you can. And it doesn't matter. I think you should feel free about that. Uh, and I'm more than happy to answer at any point of time. I think if we can make it some change little bit within this, and that can help change people. Uh, Last year, I will say somebody asked me, can you change India? I said, no, I can only change you, and you can change the person sitting next to you. So let's be more practical and pragmatic in life. Okay. Thank you very much. It's such a pleasure to know you all. Keep up the good work. And this gives me a lot of hope and optimism that I'm not wasting my time by coming to India for the last 8 years, because I am sure that this will result in what you people are doing. And I'm there to support you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Even we would really like to have something in practical. If you come to Mumbai, we will really plan out something, and then we can do it in person once this COVID is over.
No worries.
And yes, sir, that will be really grateful. Now we come to the end of this session and the end of the Kalpana 2.0 with an amazing bang on session by Dr. Ashish Joshi, sir. Really, thank you so much, sir. And now I would like to invite Dr. Ajoy sir to share his some views. Dr. Ajoy sir, he is the secretary of IMAMSN and chairman of IMAMSN Maharashtra, and is a practicing physician in Mumbai with an experience over 30 years. He is our support system and somebody who keeps up our moral with his enthusiasm and encouragement for any kind of student activity. We are really thank you, sir, and I would like to invite you to sir to share your view. Over to you, sir. So you are on mute. You have to unmute. Yes.
You can hear me now? You can hear me now?
Yes, sir. We can hear
Am
you.
I audible? Yeah, you say audible, na?
Yes, sir.
Give me a thumbs
Yes,
up.
sir.
Yeah. Now, Dr. Ashish, you're still there, right? Dr. Ashish, that was a great presentation, and I really enjoyed the last part of it. I wasn't there at the beginning of your lecture, and going to the USA and coming back and working in India, that's requires really guts and dedication, and of course a lot of heart to work. And this is one great example of Dr. Ashish. He had something in his mind, and he's something very, very passionate about. And that's how research works. It has to go through your heart. You just can't say, I want to do this because I want to get something. It's not you're going to get something. It's like it's going to soothe your heart. It's going to make you feel for the rest of your life that you've done something. That is a research. And the idea of medical students network going up this Kalpana 2, I think for the last 3 days you've been having a very, very busy sessions, and you people are really doing very good work. I mean, at a very early age, I'm quite sure Dr. Ashish will be quite surprised, and of course he must be also very happy that we have our medical students over here who is doing so much of research which was not done, say, about a decade ago or maybe 2 decades ago. And I want to talk to all of you because those who are already MSN members, you know what MSN is working like. For those who are not, I think you all should join MSN because this is going to be your stepping stone to your future. Not only future as a practitioner, as a physician, now we are talking about physician leadership. Dr. Ashish talked about physician leadership. Leadership means you got to take the lead, and then the rest follows, in the sense the whole community follows, your team follows, and that's how you progress in the healthcare system. So those who are not members of MSN, I don't know whether they are allowed to participate, you all should become members. It's going to help you a lot, and it's going to give you all the guidance that you require for your future, not only just getting through your MBBS. It's going to be actually throughout your life. After you finish up with MSN, you go into IMA, and from IMA, you get all types of support. All of you know that IMA has more than 2.5 lakh members in this country, and it's one of the largest, I would say, medical organizations in the world. And I do want to congratulate Garima, and I think Shreya also is a part of this. And I think you just keep this good work going. I think this is just fantastic. I'm telling you, you people are very innovative yourselves. You're talking about ideation and innovation and creativity. This MSN team itself actually is innovative and creative. You people are the living example of ideation, innovation, and creativity. And now you're putting it into practice, you're putting it into form, you're putting it into work. And I think this whole country is going to be really grateful to you in the long run. You have made the initiative, you are making the move, you are doing the work, but ultimately the results will show in the long run. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for always supporting us, and it is all because of you, great leaders, which we have. We are able to do this, and the amazing speakers and our amazing seniors who were there who had made this path so that we can work and we can take it further. Really, thank you so much. Now it is an official end. We have come to the officially end of this event, the Kalpana 2.0, and we hope we will be back with Kalpana 3.0 soon. And by the end, I would like to wish to express my gratitude to Dr. Ajohita sir for providing encouragement. We all are really inspired by your words, great words. And I would also like to mention our deep sense of appreciation to Dr. Ashish Joshi for joining us so early and giving us his inspirational views. And it was great motivation to us. And we are even though we have got the responses in the chat box as well, that many students they have commented that yes, we really enjoyed and we really like the, yeah, we are completely supportive of your idea and your mission, and we would like to take it further ahead in our upcoming future. And further, we are also grateful to all the speakers for all our 3 days. And I'm also like to express a sincere thanks to Dr. Shiv Kumar Uture sir, chief guest. He is the president of Maharashtra Medical Council, who joined us and inaugurated the session. And we are also like to acknowledge our gratitude to IMA Maharashtra State, and I would like to thank all the participants for your active participation. We had a stimulating and instructive exchange of ideas during these 3 days. I trust that you all will take home further inspiration on how to foster the necessary changes. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining and for all your participation.
Could I make a mention? Could I make a mention?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Sure.
Dr. Ashish, I'm very much impressed with you because, by the way, in which part of USA are you? Where do you stay?
Yeah, I'm with the City University of New York, sir, in New York City.
New York City.
At the heart of the pandemic, we were there. So it's been quite a journey. But I live in New Jersey, but I work at New York City. So it's been quite an
Yeah, as
opportunity.
far as pandemic is concerned, actually, I'm working in the slums of Dharavi in Mumbai, and
I
Dharavi has
see.
become world famous. You know that.
No, no,
So
no. I
what was
really wish
negative
you.
has become positive. What has become
Yeah,
negative has become positive. You just imagine,
sir.
and
No,
that's
no,
because
no.
of this type of survey.
I will tell you, sir, very honestly. I always think that the solution to healthcare will come from India.
That's
That
it.
that is my belief. And today, when I see this, sometimes I get tired because I finished off my talk with Lady Irving College yesterday at 2 a.m. in the morning, and I had to get up again because I will say it again here that please encourage this thing. This is like a mission, as you mentioned. This is not a common thing. This is a mission. And I have to tell you, when I first came to the US, the first book chapter I read was on environmental health, which actually showed one page, and I never forget that, where the rice being given from India to Africa had a kind of an insect, and that hit me hard. Nobody said that we sent so many people outside, support so many things, but what we did, what the book published, something which is so nitty picky of some of the bad things. And at that moment, I had thought in my mind, it was, I think, third day or fourth day of my visiting the US. I had thought to myself, we need to transform. And I'm not going to be, whether I will be succeeding or not doesn't matter to me at all. I don't care about that. But at this point, I feel satisfied that I have made my dedication and attempt to at least no grudges where I want to take it. I think that my aspiration is to build something so big as a platform which is managed by the people in the most honest way. That it needs to be done. So whether I can do it in my lifetime, I don't know, but at least I will try my best. I've been coming like almost 97. My son is 8 years of age, and my daughter is 12. They keep on asking me like that every 2 days you go, 3 days you leave us and just go there. So I said, no, beta, you need to understand. That's my country. So I think we need to make sure that this is an important element. So I actually kudos to the team, but also kudos to you for encouraging and providing that opportunity to the students. And I think they should be, don't stop here, I will tell you, and please find a way where I can be able to contribute, I can get engaged more actively. I have huge vision. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I have a huge vision. And it's been 8 years, so anybody, when I say I talk so bluntly, why? Because I've done the work on the ground. I'm not sitting
Anyway,
yeah.
Anyway, sir, we have this, I would say, very, 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 very energetic team of innovative ideas students. That's the
Mhm.
medical students network. You know how Garima is and how the others were talking.
Mhm.
Okay, we are always with you. I am in Mumbai. Garima also is based in Mumbai. You will have our contact numbers. So anytime you would like to do any project in Mumbai, we are there. And in Mumbai, we have a IMA team. As I told you, we got rid of COVID from Dharavi. Can you imagine that? So we are very strong and dedicated team. So we are with you. It's a very good thing that I came to know about you, and you came to know about the Medical Students Network. I think we can let's make a different beginning to whatever you are doing. We just add on.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, and be safe, be well, all of you. Take care.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so
Tell
much.
bye bye, beta. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Well done.
Yeah.
My team has done a
Thank you.
fantastic job, uh, and I am very happy. Just keep the good work going. Okay.